Hello and welcome to the Zonta Club of the Santa Clarita Valley's Life Forward Workshop, Creating Boundaries with Confidence and Empowerment, presented by Shana Vonn. Thank you for joining us during Mental Health Awareness Month. I am Beth Heiserman, Vice President of the Zonta Club of the Santa Clarita Valley. I would like to introduce today our President, Nicole Miller. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat, and we will be answering your questions during and at the end of our presentation. To make all of our guests comfortable today, we will be recording this workshop, but we have privacy settings. Feel free to click on the stop video to disable your camera because this presentation will be recorded live on Facebook and be uploaded and available to view on our website. Please feel welcome to share this with friends and family. We are requesting that everyone remain muted during our presentation. It will only record the host. Please feel free to share this presentation with your friends and family. Please visit our past workshops on our website at scvzonta.org. And now I present Phyllis Walker, Chair of our Life Forward Committee.
I would like to say welcome to everyone this morning to Zonta's Life Forward Workshop, Creating Boundaries with Confidence and Empowerment. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Shana Vonn. Shana has facilitated and presented many Life Forward workshops for us over the years, and she is now back by popular demand. She is a mental health and relationship expert, an inspirational speaker, professor, podcaster, writer, actor, and thought leader. She's credited with implementing programs such as Women's Space, Wake Up, Stand Up, Annual Sexual Harassment Assault Symposium, and Telling Our Story workshops to promote awareness and prevention of sexual assault, relationship violence on college campuses. She is a founding member of the Civic Engagement Committee at our local College of the Canyons and the Santa Clarita chapter of the League of Voters, Women Voters, and also a family member of Moore Park College, currently teaching women and men of color advocates. Now, Shana, the stage is yours to share your expertise about creating boundaries and becoming empowered.
Thank you so much, Phyllis, for that warm welcome. And thank you to Zonta for having me. Beth, if we could get the PowerPoint queued up. I'm not seeing it on my end. And then I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you. Okay, so we're all about to move back into the world, the workplace. Thanksgiving dinner is going to be back on this year, committee meetings. Even my Zoom meetings have gotten to a point where I need to set some parameters and boundaries because there's so many and people want to have them, at the crack of dawn, and other people are trying to have them, way into the wee hours of the evening. So it's good for us to kind of have a refresher, if you will, in regards to setting some healthy boundaries and how we can do that and feel empowered through setting those boundaries. If you can move to the next slide for me. Thank you. Okay, so first I want to give a little background in regards to how boundaries are set. So initially, we all come into this world with boundaries intact, and we set those boundaries by using our intuition. If you pay attention to children will observe, and sometimes they'll be a little more reserved with some folks versus other people. And that is basically the child relying on their intuition. Does this person feel good to me, feel welcoming to me? Do I want to go near this person? Do I not want to? And what you'll also see is in those moments, the child will check in with the parents, kind of make eye contact to see if, okay, this space or this person is safe, or if I walk away from you, am I going to be okay? Is there any concern on the parent's face? So we all come into the world with this innate, organic way of setting boundaries. And then what happens is parenting happens, societal norms and cultural norms happen. And then that starts to quiet that voice that's inside of us, that is kind of our natural warning if there's somebody that's unsafe for us. So, for example, where you might have a child that is having some reservations, somebody comes to the house, or you're out with relatives, and Aunt Sarah or Uncle Frank is going in to hug or kiss the child, and the child is kind of pulling back. What sometimes happens is that the parent or the adult in the room will say, "Oh, go ahead and kiss Grandma so and so, or kiss Aunt Sarah or Uncle Frank, or give them a hug." And every time we do that, we are conditioning the child to go against that natural intuition that they have. So that's the first thing that happens. And then the next step is gender norms are introduced to us. So what it means to be male or female, and then also the behaviors that are expected by society of what it means to be male or female. And then some of those attributes that are attributed to women specifically, in regards to gender norms, are historically have been that women are supposed to be, more agreeable, more accommodating, the caretaker, take care of everything and everyone, the nurturer, the more submissive of the two genders, weaker in different ways and different levels, whether you're talking strength or you're talking intelligence. And then the question becomes, how do we push beyond that and get our needs met and be able to set some healthy boundaries for ourselves? And I ran across a great quote. There's one here that's on the slide that you can see in the corner. Oh, it went away. You can see in the corner, but there's another slide. There's another quote that I ran across the other day, and it was basically is that we don't have to, we're not required as women, we're not required to set ourselves on fire to make others feel warm. So in order to make ourselves feel comfortable, but also to a certain extent, because we are, I'm not going to say we are the natural nurturers, because I believe that men can be very nurturing as well. But society has taught us. So to push beyond those societal norms, what do we have to do to find a good balance to where we're still taking care of ourselves? Because that has to happen first, and then still be able to give and pour into others. So 2 keys to undoing all of those things, that societal conditioning, those social norms, the cultural norms. How do we push beyond that to set healthy boundaries for ourselves? Number 1 key you can see here on the bottom of the slide is loving yourself first. Loving yourself sets the tone for pretty much everything. In regards to boundaries specifically, if I don't love myself, if I'm not treating myself well, if that inner voice that I have is constantly on repeat, putting myself down and being very damaging to myself, then it's easier for me to allow other people to treat me the same way, to treat me poorly. So in order to make sure that you're setting those healthy boundaries, first we have to have ourselves in check. We have to make sure that we're loving ourselves well. And some people will probably have the question, well, how do I do that? I'm not that great at doing that. So how do I do better in regards to loving myself? The first thing I would say is get used to treating yourself well and live in how that feels, how that makes you feel when you say maybe run yourself a bath and you put certain bath salts in it and you have certain, lavender scents in the room. You pour yourself a glass of wine or make it your favorite tea and you have the bubbles just right. All those things that you do to treat yourself well, once a week, maybe take a book that you enjoy reading and going and sitting outside, enjoying nature and enjoying that coffee or that cup of tea. All those things, and it doesn't have to be something that's you just, monumentous, but all those little actions that you take in regards to self-care and showing yourself love. When you get used to that expectation, it's harder for others to come in and treat you any less than how you would treat yourself. And setting healthy boundaries is a form of self-care because it helps you to protect yourself from a plethora of things. I don't want to jump ahead. So a lot of things, and I'm going to get to that, but it is a form of self-care. The second thing on this slide is that we have to, as women, move beyond this or heal from this disease to please, because we've been socialized in a certain way and we've been taught that, you take care of certain things and I'm not saying anything about different roles in families, but what I am saying is the need to go beyond certain parameters to where we are making ourselves feel uncomfortable, where we are putting ourselves out there more than we are taking care of ourselves. We're giving ourselves over and over to others and never replenishing and pouring into ourselves. Then we've crossed an unhealthy line. So the disease to please is when you go beyond your own personal boundaries and make sure everybody else is taken care of and we're not taking care of ourselves. And that's why I thought that quote was perfect, is that you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And as a matter of fact, if you do, you won't be able to keep anybody warm because you'll have nothing else to give to others. So we have to show up and we have to love ourselves first. And then also we have to get beyond this need or disease to please others. It's not a selfish thing to take care of yourself, and you have to take care of yourself and set healthy boundaries for yourself with people from all walks of life, where you're talking coworkers, you're talking committee members, I have sorority members, you're talking your spouse, or you're talking even your children. So you have to set healthy boundaries for yourself, because if we're on fire, we can't take care of anybody else. Okay, next slide, please. And I think the video should start, but you might have to, maybe, there we go. And hopefully, I can't hear it on my end, but hopefully you can hear Beyonce in the background of this video. But the number one thing that where we can start is that we train people how to treat us. And if you notice on that video, the woman is walking in the room each and every time. Yes, she's dressed in different clothing each time, same woman, different clothing, but walking into the room very confidently, head held high, smile on her face, ready to greet, ready to talk to people. And the lesson in that is that we begin training people how to treat us from the moment that they encounter us, the moment we walk into any space, the moment we jump in on to any Zoom meeting, we are training people how to treat us. And first impressions are key, because it is very true that you do not get a second chance to make a first impression. And let me explain this. So maybe a person's first impression of you isn't necessarily what you would like them to have framed in their mind. And you get to actually know that person. You spend some time with that person. And so they've gotten to know you and they know some other characteristics of your personality. But let that one time pop up that reminds them or skews back to their original perception or impression of you, that person is more than likely going to say, see, I knew they were like that anyway. I knew that from day one. That's what I thought about that person. So it is really true that you do not get a second chance to make a first impression. People from that first impression, they start formulating opinions about you, putting you into, let me pause here because I got to give you a little psychology lesson with this as well. So Jean Piaget, very famous psychologist, talked about how children attach language to objects when children are learning language. And not only do children apply all those objects in their brain that are stored, and once they can connect the language to it, that's called a schema. So literally in our brain, we have millions of schemas for different things. We also have them for different personalities, and we have them for different situations. So when a person walks in a room, we automatically start to formulate these opinions and attributing different attitudes to that person based on the schemas that we have stored in our brain. And I'm going to give you an example. So if a person walks in a room or into our space, and let's say, for example, they're dressed from head to toe in black. Their hair is maybe a purple or a blue, and they have on some heavy dark makeup. Some people might assume, oh, wow, they might be goth, or it might be a person that, emo, especially if you're going back to your high school days. And that is, that's a space that they operate in. We start attributing these attributes and opinions to that person based on their appearance. Everyone just naturally, innately does that. But what if that person is dressed in all black, has some colorful hair, and has some heavy makeup on because they are a makeup artist or they are a stylist? And that is just their fashion sense. That's just the way they dress. But we've already, put our opinions and these attributes on that person. And from that, we start treating people a certain way. So from the beginning, any moment that you encounter a person, you have to keep that in mind. What impression do I want to put on this person? Because that is going to establish the parameters, the way in which they view me. And if I'm training them on how I want them to treat me, then I need to establish this about me, because they're picking up and they're paying attention to cues in regards to how to treat me. So that's number one. Number two, there is another thing that you can do, another tool that I use in order to establish, boundaries. And I call it nipping it in the bud. And sometimes I call it snatching it back, but nipping it in the bud. So when you have, or you experience, maladaptive is a psychological term that we use, but it basically means bad or outside of social norms behavior. When you experience that, the best thing to do is to nip it in the bud, not to let it fester and grow, because each time that we allow a person to treat us poorly, we're sending the message to them that, oh, I can do this and they'll still be around me. They'll still spend time with me. They'll still give me their love, support, and attention each and every time that we allow the bad behavior. So you don't allow it to fester and grow. You address it immediately. And I'm going to give you a couple of tools to be able to address it. One, you can use extinction. And if there are moms in this meeting, well, parents, period, because dads use it too. If you think back to, if you use time out in a way of maybe correcting behavior with your children, you can use that in your other relationships as well. It's basically called extinction. And extinction is when we remove our energy, our attention, our love, support from a person if there is bad or maladaptive behavior. And of course, you're going to address it. Hey, you know what? That didn't make me feel so great. What you said or what you did, yeah, that's not the way to approach me. You let them know what is wrong, what they did wrong, what the infraction is, and then you remove yourself, you remove your attention, you remove your communication, your interaction, your engagement with that person for a period of time. And what you're doing is sending a message, oh, the person now knows exactly what they did. And you've given them a moment to think about that, correct the behavior. And then the next time that you show up and you want to engage with them, hopefully they got the lesson and they behave a little differently. So the same way that we use time out with our children, you can apply to any other relationship in order to create correct behavior and build some boundaries and establish some parameters to your relationship. Now, how timeout fails is when a parent gives in too soon and addresses the child's crying or answers the question when the child says, well, how much more time do I have? Or can I do this? Or mom or dad? When you do that too quickly, the person will also learn, oh, well, they were just throwing a little temper tantrum. They didn't really mean it. So you really have to be careful and mindful of the timing, the space that you give there for the person to actually get the lesson and say, hey, that really must have upset her or him. And maybe I do need to think about, the delivery of my statements or using profanity or how I approach this person. Maybe I need to think about that. I also use some simple buzzwords. I use unacceptable and inappropriate. And these are real quick. I use them in the classroom. I use them in meetings. So you don't necessarily have to address the behavior immediately, but you quickly let that person know that they've crossed a line with you. Whatever they've said or whatever they've done is crossing a line. So they can hopefully quickly correct themselves. And if you want to have a conversation about it afterwards, after the meeting or after the family gathering, then you can do so afterwards. So what that looks like for me is if I'm sitting in a meeting, and this has happened a couple of times, a person says something, I'm like, inappropriate. And then I just go back to whatever I was saying, or I go back to whatever the other person was saying. I let them know that you've crossed a line, you've crossed a boundary, and then I'm moving on. I'm moving on, I'm back over here. And later on, if they want to come and say, you said this, I'm kind of confused. What did you, well, when you said this, it was an inappropriate statement because of this, this, and this. Or it was unacceptable to me because it was this, this, and this. It crossed the line for me. And so I hope and I would appreciate in the future that you didn't cross that line or you didn't say certain things. And then for some folks, and in some situations, I just don't entertain ignorance. When the behavior is either the situation does not warrant or allow time for you to address it immediately, or the behavior is so outlandish and so outside of your boundaries or your parameters, sometimes you can send a message by completely ignoring that behavior. Like, I'm not going to address that. And I'll give you an example. This is just something that popped in my head this morning. I had a student a couple of semesters ago, and every time he came into the classroom, he wanted to engage in, just light banter, et cetera. And so we would do that. But on this one occasion, he came into the classroom and he came up to me and he stuck his hand out I don't know if he was trying to give me dap or do a fist bump. I don't know what that was, but to establish my boundaries, I ignored the extended fist bump and I stuck out my hand and I said, good morning, Mr. So-and-so. And how are you doing today? And that let him know that my boundaries are addressing me by my name and shaking my hand, because we're not friends. I'm your professor and you are the student. So there are certain ways that you can just not entertain whatever behavior is being pushed at you. You can circumvent or give another behavior, an alternative behavior for the person. But sometimes I'll just ignore it altogether and I'll just move on to the next conversation, the next topic, or the next person. And that lets that person know, wow, I guess that loud outburst, or I guess that rude thing that I just said was not accepting of her or in this space. So you can send messages pretty quickly and let people know, train them how to treat you and set some parameters and boundaries for you. Yourself. Next slide, please. Okay. You have a voice, use it. I am one of those folks that truly believes in being a voice for the voiceless. I speak up and out about so many things that happen in our society, but I'm also very aware that everyone has a voice. Everyone has a story. Everyone has opinions. Everyone has their own perspective of things. And everyone should use that voice. And I think also one of my responsibilities is when I meet people like that don't feel real comfortable in using their voice, I try to help them to get there, because in establishing those boundaries, it's very important for us to be able to speak up for ourselves and let others know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable when they are in our space. So number one, how do you start? If you are one of those people out there and you're like, well, you know, there's so many times I find myself in situations where I really want to speak up, I really want to say something, but I'm just too afraid to do that. And this is coming from a person. I was a very, very shy person growing up. As a matter of fact, some of my relatives didn't even think that I could speak until probably about 14, 15. I really didn't start speaking up and engaging with people a lot other than my immediate family, because I was just a very, very shy person. But once I started speaking up, once I found my voice, I haven't shut up since. So how does a person start? You can take baby steps. And what I mean by baby steps are, let's say, for instance, you're in a grocery store or a department store and you're shopping, and the price that's posted when you get to the register, this is a hypothetical example, you get to the register, you can see that it rings up much more than what was posted. There are a lot of people that will go ahead and pay that extra price because they don't want to have any sort of conflict, or they don't want to speak up about it. A baby step could be just saying, you know what? When I was back there, the kale was marked $1.49 a bunch, and it just rang up $2.49 on your register. Can you check that for me? And what you will find is each and every time that you do that, you are building your voice, you are making it stronger. It could be showing up at the next meeting. You know what? We've been talking about this plan that we want to do something in the summer, we want to do something in the fall, and I have all these great ideas, but I feel kind of afraid or scared that it's going to get shot down. Next meeting, decide, I'm going to bring my ideas to the table. And you know what? Everyone might not agree with your idea, but you want to pitch it anyway. Because every time you pitch your ideas, every time you express your opinions or your perspective on things, you are building confidence in your voice. Next family's conversation or gathering, if you always have that person in the family that speaks for you or tries to speak for you, or just assumes that you were thinking something, no, that's really not how I feel about that topic. Or no, I never said that. You got that wrong, and you've been saying it wrong for years. So let me correct the record there. So find these little small instances where you can speak up for yourself. And what you will find over time is you finally have built some confidence in your voice, where it becomes very routine that you're speaking up for yourself. And each time you do, you are setting boundaries and parameters for yourself and how people are to interact with you. You do have to hone your voice and find a balance. In certain situations, we have to use a different voice. For example, I'm not going to speak the same way that I might speak to or exercise my voice with my daughter or my family as I do at work with coworkers or my employer. That has to be a little different. But you can still get your point across. You can still get your perspective and your narrative heard. It just has to be a little different delivery. So one of my mentors, she uses a more diplomatic approach to things. So when we're in meetings, she's taking in everybody's opinion. And then after everyone is spoken, she'll kind of go back one by one. Well, Sarah, you brought up this and you said this, but could we think about this? And maybe if you mull that over, maybe you can come back with a different idea. And Kathy, you said these, and those were great points. But I would challenge you to maybe think about this. And then, so she uses a very diplomatic approach. My go-to approach personally is a more direct approach. Sometimes you're just not going to have the time or the situation does not permit for you to make everybody feel all warm and fuzzy. So I'm that more direct person that comes in and says, well, this won't work because of this, this, and this. Great idea, but because this, and this, we can't necessarily go that way. So can we look at this one? But what I would encourage you to do is, in finding your own voice, find what's comfortable for you. The direct approach isn't comfortable for everyone. And for me, I don't necessarily find going through every single person's ideas, breaking them down, reconstructing them, and giving them other things. I don't always find that necessarily fitting for every situation. So you really have to kind of hone your voice, because you want to make sure that you are heard, but you also want to make sure that we're not stifling the perspective and the voice of other people. So the challenge in it is honing your own voice and finding a good space for you to where you feel like you're heard and you're understood and you're able to set the boundaries and parameters for you. But also we want to make sure that we're welcoming people to the table so they feel comfortable to share their situation, their story, their perspective, etc. And the accomplishment or the gratification in finding your voice is the empowerment. Once we can speak up and stand up for ourselves and convey our story, our perspective, the way that we think, our opinions, that is empowering. It gives us so much joy. And a sense of accomplishment. So I would encourage everyone to find a good space and a good niche for you where you feel comfortable. You can start off with those baby steps in establishing and kind of honing your voice. And if you're like me and you are very kind of shy, laid back, maybe reserved person, and you would like to exude yourself a little more and establish those parameters, those boundaries a little more in situations, make yourself heard, you will find over time that you will find it very empowering. I don't know why I'm struggling with that word right now. Empowering every time that you do so. It's necessary to find your voice, because it's not only about setting those boundaries, but it also allows us to protect our energy and protect the space around us, block out that negativity, that toxicity sometimes that will approach us through different people and through different situations. Okay, next slide, please. There is great value in saying no. No is a complete sentence on its own. It's very finite. And I would encourage you to wield the no without equivocating, without justifying, without qualifying, without explaining your no. You do not have to do that, and apologizing for your no. No just means no. Nah, not gonna happen, not acceptable to me, I'm done, period. Let's move on. Oftentimes, and this goes back to us wanting to please people, wanting to make other people feel comfortable. We have this sense of urgency to explain why we can't do something, why we can't chair this committee, why we can't be at this function, why we aren't going to show up for Thanksgiving dinner, even though Thanksgiving dinner will be on again this year. We have this need, and it ties back to how we were socialized at a very young age, to make sure that everybody's happy and comfortable. But I would say, I would offer to you that what's really important in those moments is that the person understands when I give a no, it means no. And that applies to everyone. You're talking to your children, your spouse, your coworker, your committee members, your sorority members, etc. I oftentimes find myself, or in the past, overcommitting myself to do different things, to serve on different committees, to be at certain places. And what it did was just drain me completely. And when I'm drained, I cannot give my 100% to all the things I've committed myself to. So I got real comfortable in saying no and not allowing any questioning of it. So when you start to qualify it, when you start to apologize for it, when you start giving all these reasons why, then that allows an opportunity for somebody to jump in and try to coerce you in to changing your no. And that's not what you want, because then you'll walk away tied into some position or committing to do some task or some job that is not part of your job description, because you didn't just stand firmly in your no. It leaves no ambiguity. There is no reason for you to question it if it's a no and period. Work assignments, organizations, committees, family members, giving money to friends and family members, or first of all, alone, don't even do it with friends and family. Just consider it a give if you're going to do that, because that'll cause less confusion there. But if you're coming for the Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, we had a year's break, and you might have decided, "Whew, I kind of enjoyed that." This person that I know every year I'm going to get in an argument with. Maybe this holiday season you pick one, and the other one, hey, I'm just going to spend with my immediate family. Well, why aren't you coming? No, we're just not going to do it. Period. We're not going to do it. The no helps us to shut a door and to move the conversation forward, to the next person, to the next topic, to the next whatever whatever's on the agenda. Just stand firmly in your no. It lets people know that these are the parameters, these are the boundaries I'm giving you, and this is one that I am not going to compromise on. It's really about what makes you feel comfortable in that moment. And a lot of times we will be comfortable when we said the no, but then when we start equivocating, we start justifying, we start apologizing for it, we allow people back in to make us feel uncomfortable in that moment. All right, next slide, please. I'm trying to move quickly because I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A. Boundaries, set boundaries and do not give away your power. So let's talk about power. We all have power. It has already been given to all of us. It's nothing you have to ask for. It's nothing that you have to search for. It's nothing that you have to wait on. Our illustrious Madam VP and my sorority sister, Kamala Harris, taught us that you don't have to ask permission to lead. I would also offer to you, you do not have to ask for the power. It is already in you. It's already been given. The problem is that most of us don't believe that we have any. And we don't believe that we have power because we were taught, we were socialized, we were conditioned to believe that there are only certain people in our society that can reach certain levels, or have a certain amount of power, whether we're talking intelligence-wise, strength-wise, idea-wise, mental stability. With women, we're often, labeled as the emotional of the two genders. So that comes from a place of weakness versus strength. So the problem is that we don't believe that we have power, but let me show you where the power lies, because that's not true. Each and every one of us has been given certain gifts. The gifts that we are given are aligned with our purpose in life, the thing that we are supposed to pursue, the thing that we are supposed to accomplish as one small component of this huge collective called humanity. And that one purpose, only you can fulfill. I can't do it, the next person can't do it. And on top of that, I rely on it some way, directly or indirectly. The next person relies on you completing your purpose, directly or indirectly. All of humanity, it's like we're all parts of a puzzle, and we all come into this world with certain gifts, and those gifts align to our purpose. In that lies your power, because this whole big thing can't operate without what you have to offer, what you bring to the table in regards to the collective and humanity. Now you're saying, well, wait, society says that if I'm not doing this, this, and this, then I'm not really contributing. But you are. If you are, let's take stay-at-home mom, for example. That stay-at-home mom is pouring into her children every single day, knowledge, book knowledge, and experiences that she's had. She's pouring in love, care, attention, empathy, compassion, all of those things. And what if that child goes on to become president, vice president, governor, city council, educator, inventor, writer? All of that stemmed from what that mom poured into that child. She poured her power. She shared her energy. She shared her everything, her essence with that child, poured it into that child. And that was the power, the energy that allowed that child to move on and grow. So you might be the stay-at-home mom. You might be the person that's writing that children's book that will inspire a child to do something great and wonderful later on in life. You might be that person that's sitting on, all these leadership skills, and you've been just too afraid to jump out there and run for office and, try to correct some of the wrongs in society by taking on that leadership position. You could have a creative hand and eye where you create this beautiful dress for a young woman who has, say, body dysmorphia. She doesn't think that her body looks all great, but you design this perfect dress that fits her perfectly, and that just allows that young lady to shine. So our power lies in our gifts, and our gifts align with our purpose. Your purpose could be that one time that you cross that person that is on the verge of committing suicide, and you say that one thing to them that awakens the power in them, gives them that spark to say, hey, no, I have a gift too. I have something to contribute to this world. And there's power in that. And with that acknowledgement, we should all stand in that power. So each and every room that you enter into, every space, every committee, every group you join, every relationship you have, know that you belong there. Know that you are worthy of that space that you take up, because you have power. And we just need to unlearn what has been conditioned, what we have been taught, because we all have power, and we all need to acknowledge that and stand in it. Our value and our worth. Again, our value, oh, next slide, please. Thank you. So when we know that our power lies in our gifts and our purpose, then you have to also make the connection that you have value and worth in this world, to society, to your family, to your friend groups, to your sisters, to organizations, to your company. You have value and worth because that value and worth is tied to what you are here to contribute. And another thing I would offer you is, if you cannot acknowledge or understand your value and worth, then that's when we start treating ourselves poorly. And that takes us back to slide number 1. Don't move. But that takes us back to the information on slide number 1. If we don't know our value and worth and we show up in our power, then we're sending these messages out to people, because that's the running narrative in our head. And it shows. People can see that. They can feel that energy, that we don't know our value and worth. And what that does is set us up for those people that are out there in the world that have this agenda of bringing negativity, bringing toxicity, bringing us down, or wanting to take advantage of us, manipulate us. It is like inviting them in. It's really like inviting them in, because they're constantly looking for the next target, the next person. So when you don't show up valuing yourself and knowing that you're worth and worthy of being in every space that you enter, because it's all tied to your power and what you bring to the collective and what you bring to this world, then people will pick up on that and try to cross those boundaries. So you have to know and acknowledge your value and your worth, and wear that like a badge of honor. Know that you deserve to be in every space. Know that you showed up in this world just as you are, worthy and with value because of what you have to contribute to society. And again, all those things, mentoring to a person, the one kind word that you can give to a person, what you can contribute creatively, what you invent, like all of those things are tied to those gifts, and those gifts are necessary. No one can duplicate what you are here to bring to the world. And there's great power in that. And so that what I have here for the last slide is that when you acknowledge that, and you're only accepting of that positive energy, number one, we might recognize some of those folks that want to still cross those boundaries. And those people, and it's really difficult when they're family, because we can't get rid of family, right? Those people you have to love from a distance. And here's how that looks. For me, I have a family member that I have to love from a distance. It's an unhealthy relationship for me, but a very close family member. So I can't necessarily move this person out of my life or out of my space, but I limit my time when I'm around that person. That person only has a certain amount of access to me, meaning they cannot contact me by phone. They cannot contact me on social media. They can only contact me on email. And that is a healthy boundary and parameter I had to set for myself, because this person was a repeat offender. No matter what I said, no matter what I did, no matter how many arguments I had to recognize for me, the only behavior that can change is mine. This person is not going to change. So I put those healthy boundaries in place to protect me, to protect my energy, to protect my inner peace, which you're seeing here on the last slide. So if people cannot respect those boundaries, sometimes we have to love them from a distance. So last thing I would say to you is establishing those boundaries enables us to protect our energy, our peace, our light, that light that we bring to the world. It helps you to continue to be productive, pursue your purpose, to love yourself, to love others, and to protect your inner peace. So it's very, very important that we establish those healthy boundaries. And one of my favorite quotes I'll leave you with is, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. That's by Dr. Maya Angelou. And I'll just leave it there. And I think we have one question that was emailed. Oh, here's my information here. If you want to shoot me an email or contact me, my social media information is there. And we have one. We're going to open it up at this moment for Q&A. So hopefully you have posted some questions in the chat. I hear somebody coming in.
Yes, I
Okay.
do have 2 questions.
Mhm.
I have a question would be, what happens when you hear no from the same person too many times? What do you do?
So I'm going to answer that with another quote. Sometimes rejection is our protection. So, and of course, I know it applies to the situation, and I don't have the situation, but sometimes that no means that this is not the right person for you. This is not the right avenue for you. This is not the right opportunity for you. That does not mean that that opportunity is not going to come. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to accomplish whatever you're trying to accomplish. It just means that either this is not, maybe not the right timing, or this is not the person that is going to connect you to whatever you're trying to get to. Eventually, if that is what is meant for you to accomplish whatever or have this opportunity, it will show up, and it will show up through the right person. So I personally, when I hear a no, I move on. I move on, because I'm wasting time here, like hitting my head against a wall with this person that's repetitively saying no, when there are other avenues where that opportunity could come from. The universe, God, whatever you believe in, does not have one way of opening an opportunity to you. And a lot of times we believe it has to be this person, this way, this company, this group, and that is not the case. So hopefully I answered that question.
I have another one. How do you
Sure.
help someone to get their inner voice when they're a bit too shy?
Okay. And I was that person. Like I said, I was that person. What I would highly, highly recommend, especially for a person, and I talk about this in my classes as well, a person that, because some people have their social anxiety is through the roof. And it's even difficult for them to say, order a coffee at Starbucks, especially if that barista wants to have an exchange or, some light banter about the weather or something. They just really get nervous. But what I would say is that you really have to find those little moments at first where you kind of push yourself through to say one thing here, say one thing there, ask somebody, or just say good morning. Because if you just say good morning, that does not trigger a response. Like, we don't have to go back and forth in the conversation. You're just taking the initiative to say something to someone. Find those little opportunities, and you will find yourself each and every time getting more and more comfortable with it. There is a therapy called desensitization, which we don't have time to go through all of that, but that's basically what a therapist would walk the person through when they have that extreme social anxiety. Each and every time getting them closer and closer to the goal. And the first baby step could be that therapist says, hey, meet me at Starbucks, and we're going to sit here and I'm going to model behavior for you. I'm going to go up and I'm going to order my drink, and I want you to go do exactly what I did. And that can be very terrifying for some people. And that could be the one step, the one thing that they do that day. And the next time, maybe there again, but this time you're going to order your drink and you're going to say, well, how's your day going? So you're going to try to engage. So baby steps is what I would say for that person that's trying to build your voice. And then one day you're going to wake up and you're going to find yourself telling people exactly how you feel about every single thing. Like I said, I haven't shut up since. So because it's very empowering, I got to a point where I was so tired of people assuming things about me, assuming how I felt and what I was thinking, and labeling things. And it wasn't that. I was just a shy, very insecure person at that time. That's what was going on, but I wasn't allowing that inner dialogue to be heard by anybody else. Hopefully that answers that question.
One more question. So
Sure.
if you have someone that is in your life that is passive aggressive or slightly like a bully, how do you get
Yeah.
them to change on how they treat you, especially in front of other people?
Wow. The passive aggressive person is very frustrating for me. So that's one, because I'm like, just say what you want to say. But you can use extinction is a good tool, because a lot of times, especially with that bullying person, you don't want to do this with them, because they're looking for that conflict. They're looking for that, something to rile them up. So extinction, removing yourself from them, the space, or it could be removing your interaction with them. So for instance, if I was out to dinner and I had a spouse that was, just described, and they engage in this type of behavior with the other people at the table, if they said something inappropriate to me, my response, or just out loud or in reference to me, I could have two different responses. I could, look at that person, that was inappropriate, and I just go back to engage other people. Or I could not engage that behavior or that comment at all and continue with the people that are in front of me. Like, you're not going to embarrass me. You're not going to stifle my voice. You're not going to quiet me. You're not going to make me feel small, because that's what bullying is. A very controlling behavior. And bullying happens because what people are doing is displacing their anger, their anxiety, their frustration, their aggression on other people. And your pushback is to say, you will not displace that on me. I'm going to carry on this conversation. I'm going to finish my thoughts. I'm going to engage with these people. And I will say this, I was in a very abusive relationship for 8 years. He was not passive at all. There were a couple of times, because he tried to hide the abuse for the most part. But there were a couple of times where he did embarrass me in public, in front of other people at a dinner table. And at that time, all I knew was to run, to bolt, to hide, or to sink and make myself feel smaller. But in hindsight, what I wish I would have done was to finish my thought, or to say, no, what I was saying was, and not make it uncomfortable for everyone, but to let it be known that I am going to be heard. You will not quiet me or make me feel small. Because with people with predatory behavior, like I said earlier, each and every time that we are passive, or our response is passive in regards to their behavior, it's kind of like we're giving them the green light each and every time. And especially with abusive people, you will tend to see that behavior escalate. So I hope I've helped there a little bit.
So we have 2 questions in the audience. First, I'm going to go with Jenny. If you unmute.
Yes, thank you so much for this presentation. I
Absolutely.
have been delving into the research, trying to inform myself for now over 3 years.
Okay.
And the reason why it's been 3 years is because I've read somewhere that people ask, if a woman's in an abusive relationship, how come she doesn't just leave? And because I never had a mark on my arm, because I was never pushed down the stairs, I didn't realize I was in an almost at that time 25-year abusive, horribly psychological, emotionally,
Yeah.
verbally. The covert abuse is the worst.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the worst for me, because it makes me it makes me feel like I was crazy. So everything you shared today is great. Well, here's
Oh,
where I
thank
am
you.
now. I've been going through a 3-year battle trying to divorce the father of my 4 children. The stronger I get, the more I come out of trauma and set the boundaries, the more I uphold them. The post-separation abuse is even worse. And
Yeah.
so much, in fact, that even if we need to meet to discuss our children, it is just extreme psychological abuse on how I'm the horrible one, how I'm toxic, how I am not mature enough to have a normal relationship with him. But I know that that's not true. So in here is a question, which is there generally like a transitionary period where when we show others how we like to be treated, it gets worse before it gets better? I would just like to ask you for maybe some advice, suggestion, or encouragement, please.
Yes. Okay. So everything you said, I experienced and more, because I experienced the physical as well. So abuse on every single level. And when you try to leave an abusive person, their behavior will escalate. The realization that you are not coming back. I don't know about you, but I left 2 times prior and I came back. So his expectation was I was going to come back. When he finally got the clue that this was it, I'm done, 3rd time is a charm, she's not coming back. And let me say this, it was 3 times for me, but on average, it's 8. It's 8 times. So don't, if you are in a situation, don't think that, don't beat yourself up about that. That's what I'm trying to say here. On average, it's longer than 3 times. But to answer your question, the abuse not only increased, he became more blatant, more open about it. Before I filed the restraining order, because I would hide his behavior from cops that would show up at the house, from my relatives, from friends, my friends, he wouldn't allow that. My friends were his friends. So that's a whole nother ball of wax, but I would hide that behavior for him. So it became more blatant to where I'd already left him, but I was still, allowing him to see our daughter. So I had agreed to meet him in a neutral place where I thought he wouldn't attack me. Just so happened on that same day, he was served with child support papers right before he came to meet with me. I picked a mall parking lot. Where I was positioned, my car was positioned. There was a gas station here, a freeway here, and a mall parking lot full of people to exchange our child. And he still beat me up in the parking lot. Out of all those people, I call him my personal Bart, the mall cop, came over on a golf cart and distracted him long enough to where I could run back and get in the driver's seat and get back in the car. But it escalated. And then he also kidnapped our daughter and kept her for a month. So and this is when we were in court. I filed a restraining order. I ended up getting, and let me say this to give you some hope, or anybody listening, to give you some hope, because they will gaslight you, tell you nobody will believe you, tell you, if you don't have documentation, police reports, if you don't have, X, Y, and Z, you can't do anything. I sat and I wrote a 12-page affidavit. I had no police reports because I would lie to the police when they came to the house. I covered for him with friends and family. Nobody knew what was going on. They would question whether or not I was sick because I had lost a lot of weight. They would question, whether I was okay, but they didn't know exactly what was going on. I sat and I wrote a 12-page affidavit and got a 2-year restraining order just off of what I wrote down. So don't allow them to gaslight you into believing that nobody will believe you and that you won't be successful and nobody will help you. That's number one. I want to say this. I would say stay the course. It's going to be rough for a period of time, but there will be this moment where they have this reckoning, if you will, that you are done. But you have to stay the course. And honestly, I'm going to keep you in my prayers because it is brutal. And like I said, I left him March 24th of 2001, and he kidnapped our daughter right before Halloween that year. It's supposed to be a weekend Halloween celebration with him, the new girlfriend, and her kids. And he kept her for a month and was hiding her out. And I had to get the courts involved, police. It was a whole thing. But after that, he disappeared for 9 years. So you never know, unfortunately, what the breaking point is for them. I thought it was going to be a new girlfriend. He'd just bring her to court. So it's, you never know, but I would say definitely stay the course, because you are letting them know, you're sending the message, number one, I'm not backing down and I'm not coming back, and you will not treat me this way anymore. And another thing I want to say to you, your children, trust me, your children, my daughter's 23 now, your children, whether they verbalize it to you or not, they can see through all the smoke screen and all the things that he might be saying to them. And they will also see your strength. They will see your strength in persevering. And you're also teaching them a lesson. At the same time, you're setting your boundaries, you're teaching your children a lesson in boundaries and how not to allow people to treat you. Excuse me.
Yes.
And it's 11:11 now. This is a good time. And are there any other questions?
I don't see any others in the chat, but if somebody would like to raise their hand, you're more than welcome to at this time.
Okay, I will go ahead and address this one question that was emailed because we haven't gotten to that one while people are thinking. How can you express your feelings to a sister that has damaged your self-esteem? There's one of my favorite comedians covered and talked about self-esteem, and self-esteem was an issue that I struggled with as well. I finally, once I did the work and introspection on myself, I was able to connect the dots to how I would have this long string of unhealthy relationships. And it was tied to my self-esteem, which my mother started damaging long before I met any of these men. So this comedian said, though, in his stand-up, he said that self-esteem is exactly what it says. It is esteem of yourself. It has to come from you. Nobody can take it away from you. Nobody can damage it, and nobody can build it up for you as well. So people can only do what we allow them to do. So the question is here, feelings that the sister has damaged your self-esteem. I would offer you to, or challenge you to think, how have you allowed their toxicity to damage your self-esteem? Meaning, our reaction to things is what we are in control of. Me diminishing or lowering my self-esteem, I have to do that. If you set those parameters and those boundaries, you can take that elsewhere. You can say whatever you want to say. You can do whatever you want to do. But for me, I'm standing in my power. My self-esteem is intact. I know that I have value and worth, and you will not chip away. That work is done within ourselves. So we are in control of our self-esteem more than we actually believe that we are. The other person can only try to chip away at it. They can only try to do their damage. The damage is done when we allow, when we change inside, when we diminish or decrease our light, if that makes sense. And I hope I answered that question. So you can set those parameters. You can say this behavior is unacceptable. Until you can engage with me in a different way, I'm going to love you from a distance. Sister, I love you, but I'm going to love you from a distance. And you set those parameters for yourself. That relative that I talked about, I only spend 2 hours max around that person. That is the mental number I've given myself, because what I found consistently in the past, if we talk longer than that, they always try to delve or get their little punches in or their little things in. So I limit the time around them physically, but then outside of that, they're limited in access to me. They cannot text me. They cannot just call me on the phone. And unfortunately, that's where it has to be, because I recognize that person is not changing. That person is not trying to grow or evolve or do better. But I can. To protect myself and to keep myself healthy, I can change my behavior. And my behavioral change was to set healthy boundaries and set the parameters for our relationship. Any last questions? We're at 11:15, but if there's anything else that popped up, I'm more than happy to address it if I can.
Yeah. No, I don't see anything in the chat other than thanking you that this was wonderful. And it was.
Awesome.
Yes,
Thank you
excellent
all
presentation.
for attending.
Thank you. So
Thank you
there's
to
lots
everyone
of
that showed
good
up.
vibes and good comments in our chat.
Great, that's awesome. Okay, so then I will pass the mic to Phyllis then. Thank you all for coming.
So I would like to thank you so much, Shana, for sharing your experience, tools, and techniques with us that will help us all move forward with the confidence in our lives. What a great workshop. And now I would like to, in closing, and Beth, could you post? I have I would like to say thank you to everyone for attending Zonta's last Life Forward workshop for our Zonta year, which is from June the 1st, 2020 to May the 13th, 2021. A curriculum of 14 virtual Life Forward workshop topics were presented to you to help us cope with the COVID-19 issues and empower women and men attendees during these turbulent times. If you missed one and would like a refresher, just check our website, zontascv.org, for recorded workshops previously presented. I would like to thank Adele McPherson, who was Zoom host from June 1st through November the 7th, and Beth Heiserman, then club president, now vice president, and Zoom host from December the 5th through May the 29th today. A big thank you to our workshop speakers. Generosity and time made these workshops possible. Kudos to the committee. Lois, Alicia, Krista, Sue, Georgia, Barbara, Cherise, Nicole, Yorlini, Stephanie, the program director of Single Mothers Outreach, and Christine. The assistants helped develop relevant topics, and obtaining our expert speakers made these workshops possible to you. I would like to thank you to all attendees. We do this for you. I, as the committee chair, and Nicole, the co-chair, and all the committee hope these workshops have provided tools and techniques to help empower and improve your daily lives. Thanks to everyone. Now, to complete, you will be receiving a brief survey later this afternoon. And I'd like you to take the time to review it and fill it out because it's going to be to include workshop topics that you would like to see for next year. We ask that you take a few minutes and check these topics of interest because they will include all of the topics, the 14 topics we've presented, plus popular past workshops that have had rave reviews. And with that, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your attendance.